It's working like a charm. I mean, this is the most psychopathic nightmare system, and the public's defenseless because all they care about is football, baseball, Hollywood gossip, and drinking their sodium fluoride, and those of us that are awake are being listed as terrorists, and the borders are imploding. I mean, it is just, and now they're getting ready for World War III. Your phone call's coming up next with Alan Watts. Stay with us.
Daddy, I'm cold.
There once was a land where the people were very, very free. Energy was cheap and prosperity filled the land. This made some grown-ups very angry, and they wanted to take away our freedoms. So they created a mythical crisis saying CO2 was bad, even though CO2 is what we breathe and it makes the plants grow. In fact, nothing would be green without CO2. And they scared all the children by saying that people doing ordinary things were killing the planet. So they passed a very nasty bill called Cap and Trade, so they could tax us for everything we do, like keeping our houses warm and driving cars. And that's why we can't afford to keep the house any warmer, honey.
Why did they do all this, Daddy?
To stop global warming, honey.
But they really did it because they want to kill that little girl. They don't want her to be born, in their own words. This is eugenics. This is about the globalists controlling society. Some folks took a government-paid-for, high-budget ad that says that bunny rabbits and dogs will drown and die, that they air in Australia, and they made a spoof of what it really means. Alan Watt, again, you understand that this is an incremental scientific dictatorship in their own words, but a lot of times you're a bit pessimistic. Speaking of solutions, before we go to calls, I do see us having a fighting chance. I mean, I really am seeing a massive awakening happening right now. And I think that's why Zbigniew Brzezinski, as you know, about 5 weeks ago, gave a speech to the CFR in Canada, where you live, and basically said for the first time in history, the whole world is awake to us and our world government's in trouble. And that's what their internal documents show. I mean, I don't think they're invincible. What do you think?
They're not invincible. It's the will of the people that's at stake here. And the problem is, and this is what they've discussed at the top themselves in their own books, they work out everything under a warfare strategy. And they've said that if those who are still making enough money to get by and so on, if they are making enough money, they will not join the rest at the bottom. So they're hoping to really segregate society from the haves and the have-nots as they push it further and further and bring up taxes and extra taxes and even value-added taxes. Britain, by the way, has just put up their value-added tax to 20% on every purchase. So they're hoping to do the same thing in America. So those who can keep affording it until it hurts them, they'll tend to neglect those beneath them who are really hurting.
And then the poor will become more vicious and start attacking the middle class, so the middle class will instinctively then kind of team up with the elite, at least in their own minds, when it's the elite that orchestrated the entire program to begin with.
That's right. And what has to happen is, therefore, is that everyone has to have a quick education, that it doesn't matter what class you think you belong to and or how well you think that you're doing at the moment. They're going to take the whole system down gradually until you're all serfs, and they get it round to everybody in the end, because there's to be no middle class whatsoever left after this agenda is through. They've said that in all their writings, from Karl Marx right up through the Royal Institute of International Affairs, no middle class will be allowed. This new scientific society, the only replacement for a middle class will be a scientific elite. And that's what we have already. Look who Obama's appointed on all these different panels. He's got more appointees than any previous government. And these guys were all the old hardline scientific socialist-type communists that have been helping to write depopulation programs for years.
Oh, there's never been an administration this packed. I mean, they're all saying no Second Amendment, global extermination, one-child policies, eugenics, no free speech. I mean, they're in a group of authoritarian, goblin-like, pot-bellied, jowled, little human-hating trash.
And also what the U.S. and everybody else has to do is to kick off all these people, all these appointees, all these NGO groups that are now appointed to governments. We did not elect them. They have no say over our lives. and therefore they have to be kicked out completely, and government has to be taught. And you know this, Alex. Government's going to, one way or another, government has to be taught, retaught, that they serve the people.
Well, notice it's not public servant. It's official. It's authority. And the media creamily calls them officials and bows down to them and gets the government press releases and with relish repeats the lies and bows to government. Everything's the opposite of what liberty is, just bowing and groveling to the petty signets of power.
That's right. This is a strange society where the public servants earn more than maybe 1,000 families combined each. So there's something wrong here, and let's get back to serving the people. They've never served the people in other countries. In the U.S., you were the only country with a chance, and I think the people have to regain that very, very quickly. And as I say, by one means or another, because we know the agenda. They've told us the agenda. They know what's in store.
Yeah, they're already poisoning the food, the water. Most of us are dead already with the soft kill weapons. Stay there, Alan Watt. We're going directly to calls when we come back. Key information straight ahead. That's the frustration, is the globalists said 100 years ago they were going to build a global socialist system to bankrupt everyone and make us all dependent on a scientific elite to then carry out the eugenics extermination of the general public. And that's what they're going to do, and they're already poisoning you in the food and water. Some people send me emails and say, we live longer than we did 100 years ago. Depending on the period, around 30%, sometimes even higher, 50%, in between those gradients, people died by the age of 5 to 6 to 7. A lot of kids died at, the first 6 months. You had a lot of infant mortality. So they average that in and say, the average person lived to be, say, 43 years old in 1860. Well, that's not true. If you made it past the age of 10, the average person lived into their early 80s. And if you look at infant mortality, they now admit that America has the lowest infant mortality. That is the highest rate of children dying, the highest infant mortality in the world, of any industrialized world country. And I'm trying to hurry here, and I start babbling whenever I do that because I've got Alan Watt in your calls. But let me just take my time on this for a moment. There's different statistics from each year gleaned in different counties and cities. And they've gone back and looked at this. But here's a layman's way of explaining it. We have family cemeteries in East Texas that we visited, and you will see Jones, Johnsons, Browns, depending on what cemetery we're visiting, and 30% or more, every 2 or 3 graves, it's a year-old child, 2-year-old child, 1-month-old child, child who stillbirth. A lot of the graves are children. So when you look at that, then you look at Russia. Their life expectancy is going way down. The United States is going way down. We are being poisoned. We are being killed. This is happening. So I'm done talking about that. Alan, I want to go to these calls, but then at the last few minutes of the show, any other points that you think are important that are on the front burner in Alan Watt's interesting and informative world, and closing out the broadcast. But right now, let's go to Dan in Colorado. Dan, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Hi, Alex. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. Been listening to you for about 7 years. Hope you'll give me a minute here to go ahead and try to correct a wrong. I believe you're a phenomenal person that has a great amount of knowledge, but one thing you said today that just bothered me so bad, it was worth waiting the hour and 20 minutes to be able to say something. This business about the Catholic clergy not allowing men to be married, promotes men having sex with men, is bull. The reality of it is, and there's from Associated Press, their insurance report indicates more child sex abuse amongst Protestants than clergy. The reality,
well, sir, let me be clear. I'm not involved in Catholic bashing here, and I get criticized because I don't Catholic bash. It's a very popular thing to do, and the media promotes it. I know there's been debates in the Catholic Church, and just from my study of different navies and other groups, it seems to me you get a bunch of men together and they can't ever be with a woman, that you're statistically going to have some problems there. But I was taking calls. I understand you've been holding before Alan Watt. But people just obsess over this stuff. The lady called in and said something about the Catholic Church, so I just threw in there that there is epidemic levels of child molestation going on all over the place. We talk about Congress and these congressmen and how in powerful positions this is going on everywhere. And I don't think that can be denied, Dan.
Alex, are you going to allow me to speak?
Well, I mean, you're on the air, sir. I just responded. You had a chance.
Well,
hold on. I'll put him on hold. You just allowed me. I mean, I allowed you to make your statement, which was a whole thought, and then I countered, and it seemed it made you really mad that I came back with my point about how child molestation is epidemic in power systems, and I'm going to get Alan Watt's take on that in a moment. But go ahead, Dan.
Or you can respect me enough to go ahead and want me to purchase your products.
No, put him on hold. Put him on hold. He's mad, see? And he's going to pick a fight with me because he doesn't like what I said earlier about how there's, I mean, obviously the Pope, I mean, if he's infallible, he said that it was wrong and he apologized. I mean, I'm not obsessing over this.